And we're going to run this itty bitty cute little jetty receiver on the inside. Oh, how adorable. Alright guys, step number one during the build is they have us installing the nacelles on this plane. So we're using just Beacon foam tack. You can pick this up at Hobby Lobby if you want, $7 for a big bottle. It's just called foam glue. That's my workshop bottle. So we need to remove the paint on these nacelle pods, and in the directions they told you to glue it first, then fish the wires through. And you can definitely do that. I removed the whole motor assembly out of here, and where I told you it was rubbing, I just literally took some sandpaper, roughed that up, and that seems to have cleared that. These hubs are on there extremely tight, and I recommend you probably don't mess with it because you're going to wind up breaking it, figuring out righty-tighty, lefty-loosey because they're opposite. And with that being said, I don't think the shaft has been. Everything looks to run pretty true in there. It's just a mismanufacturing maybe in the housing. So a little bit of sandpaper in there, just quick, easy fix on that one. Not a big deal. And how we remove the paint here on these nacelles, it's always good to scratch that foam up. You can take some sandpaper and you can just rough them up that way if you want to take some of the paint off. And one of the other things, like once the paint is off, is just go in there and scratch the stuff around a little bit so it has a place for that glue to really work into. And we're going to glue this whole block right up into there. And essentially, if you wanted to, you can even glue a little bit more up into those areas. But I was like concerned because, and you can't put these on wrong, by the way, they match the contour of the wing, so hopefully you see that right there. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get to the wiring and fish that stuff through, but these covers on these nacelles are removable. So let's sand, and then we are fishing ESC wires in and hooking the motors up on both sides. We put down just some of that plastic that came with the packing so we don't ruin it. Let's get to it. Now we're just going to push this together. Really kind of smash that stuff in there. And then you just pull it apart and let it sit for a minute. And then when we put that stuff in there, that stuff will be golden. It ain't coming out. I think we'll just scratch up a little bit more. Right up in that edge. We'll seal that up. I guess when glue's the only thing holding on these nacelles, we want plenty of it, right? Fit's pretty good. I'm right with that fit. So there's one done. Let's do the other. If you get any glue on the painted surface, now's a good time before it dries. Just take a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Just wipe that stuff off. Let's set this one in the back. Let's start fishing through some speed controls. So the ESC wires need to be fished through that port and need to come up there into that tunnel. And we're going to hold these guys now that I got my fish down through there. My wire fish. I'm going to hold those wires. I don't want them to pull through while I pull my fish. Now that I have that through, let's take off the tape. Now we can go ahead and hook up our motor assembly. And this thing isn't really held in with any screws, just the cover. So remember those little wires tucked down in there earlier. And again, you could put either heat shrink or electrical tape or whatever you want on these bullets so they don't come loose. They do have a pretty firm fit on there, so I don't anticipate that they would come loose, but here, a little bit of electrical tape goes a long way. Make sure you start at the skinny spot, work your way around over the fat part back into the skinny spot so they don't want to pull off, so you're kind of wrapping at a diagonal. Try and do as many things as I can to prevent any type of dumb failure down the road. You don't like crashes, you don't like picking up stuff. Whether it's 250 bucks or 20,000 bucks, we like our stuff to last a while and not just waste our investment. So that thing just nestles right in there. And we take our cover, plop the cover right back on, and then run our screws back down in. Maybe. Insert SpongeBob 4 hours later. Now we're going to repeat this step for the other side. Now we're going to go ahead and insert the carbon rods into each side. I always test the fit first. You may need to run them in and wiggle a little bit to make sure the fit is good. And then I'll apply, if everything dry fits okay. If everything dry fits okay, then we'll apply some foam tack and we'll put them in together permanently. Sometimes when they glue these panels together, there's a little bit of junk in there, and that's why we do this first. Because once you start foam tacking stuff, guys, that stuff goes really quick. And tight pockets, it starts to dry fast. So those look good. And in those pockets, I don't need an absolute ton of this stuff, but I want to make sure that we push it down in there. We'll apply some there and there, and then we'll get our wing pockets as well, our notches there right before we go together. Take these, work that in, give it a turn so all that glue dries up in there. Take a snap for our, oh my, dropped it. Gonna take a picture for our rcpilot.com build. If you haven't checked out rcpilot.com, please go do so. Make sure you're checking out Just Plain Crazy. And we'll bring that closer and closer. Pull these up and out of the way. Give them a little rotate. And there. Good. Good. If you're really crazy, you can go ahead and rough some of the inside edges up as well. Trust me, the only way this wing is coming apart is if it's in a million pieces, and we hope that don't happen. Just a little bit. Wiggle it just a little bit. Get that foam tack moving in there. It's already starting to dry. Yeah, baby, she's tight. That is tight. Don't even say it. Know what you're thinking. So we want to make sure that our wing is aligned. If you look there and there. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply a clamp on the inside just to keep that squeezed together. And I'm going to go unload stuff out of the trailer. We'll come back and this stuff should be plenty dry. Let's do two. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get in here without foobar in this. What about my little guy? What about me? Oh, that works. Sometimes it's not the size of the tool, it's how you use it. Just a little bit of pressure. And then this, we'll use this just to make sure everything stays level. There. back here, just playing crazy, out. We'll be back. Let's get back to it, everybody. So, glue's had plenty of time to dry, so we're going to go ahead and take off those clamps. We're going to get rid of these things. And we had one underneath. Sweet. Now, Y harnesses. We have 2 Y harnesses, so we're going to make sure that we match all of our colors up. And we're going to take care of ailerons and ailerons. And then we are going to match up our other one for gear to gear, signal to signal, ground to ground. Sometimes you may have a white wire, and that's fine to go to orange. Black should be brown, or black should be to black. And then again, we are going to use some of our favorite old electrical tape. And I always start on the skinny end, so that would be the female pins. And we just literally start on the back side of that, so it's on the skinnier portion. And then we wrap our way around to the fatter one so it holds tight. And we just do this as a precaution. We don't want anything to come loose. Let's get all 4 of these done. So the next part with our lighting control module, they show you that these are solid for on, and this set here is for flashing. So being that they're wingtip lights, we're going to leave them solid, and we are going to plug these in. We're going to go brown to black and double check those so we don't have anything burning out, shorting out, and there. Now, I actually think these are really nice little lighting control modules from Dynam. Here is my only concern with these. It comes with a lot of extra leads, so you can go ahead and literally add in 3 more lights super easy. The problem is if you don't go ahead and tape those up, you're going to run into issues with positive to negative touching right there. So it's not a big deal just to wrap those like so and prevent that, but it'd be nice if they would just cap them or something, and then you could pull the caps off. But that's all we'll do with those, and that's out of the way. And we got to tidy this stuff up just a touch in here as we go into the fuselage, and we can do that a little bit later. So there is our lighting control module, so that's done. Our ailerons are done, and our gear are done, so those sets will come over. And then we have our ESC harness that has the same thing, so we will throw a few more pieces of tape there. Make sure that they have that wired right, and they do. Make that nice and tight. All right, and for the moment, we're going to call that ready. We'll throw that off to the side. Now we are going to get our fuselage, and it is time to put the tail into the fuse. So the first thing they want us to do is to go ahead and insert this portion down in, and then we are going to install some screws in the inside of this thing. So the 3x25s that they call for here on the bottom are not the biggest ones in the bin. And we'll just simply put those in the bottom. Snug them up. Now, what I have found out with some of the Dynam planes is you kind of got to hunt around for some of the nuts on some of the parts as you go to screw these pieces in. Sometimes they go right away into the piece they're supposed to, and sometimes you got to work at it a little bit. But these are rather long, so they thread in there a good ways. So just make sure you're lined up. So it feels like the back one I got tight, and the front one must be a mess because it's not doing nothing. And here's the unfortunate part. I've got to take the back one out, because the only way to get that screw to come back up Yep, now we're started and I could feel it. So again, you just got to make sure you're lined up. Now, before we get into fixing the horizontal stab, I am going to go ahead and take some Blenderm tape to that rudder hinge surface, because doing it now is a lot easier before you get stuff put in the way. Super simple. I take a strip, I'll lay it on a board like that for cutting, or a straight edge I should say. And then I'm going to make it about just a ½ inch wide. Not too wide. We're going to cut it. We're going to peel it. And what this is going to do is this is going to prevent this thing from splitting over time and coming apart on me. And we're just going to flex that. And you know what? Let's just go a little bit wider with this one. And that's the nice part about the 1-inch Blenderm tape, guys. Grab a straight edge. Is you can cut it to be whatever size you want. And you want to be careful when you do this. You don't want to go ripping the paint off, because it will if you let it. I usually like to get it stuck first. Right to the more leading edge, if you will. And then push it down into that crease. And sometimes I'm just picky with my alignment. And then we'll just trim that off right down there. And just get a cloth or a dirty old sock and press that down in there. Now that's done. Now we're going to insert our carbon rod and we're going to do our horizontal. Don't forget to rough up those edges. While we have this apart, we might as well, guys, just go ahead and do the blend Durham tape on the elevator portions. Here, I like to do them on the bottom so we can't see them. And we already have a piece ready to go. Blend Durham's done. Let's get these pieces out of the way. So we're going to be doing the same thing here, guys. We're going to be gluing this stuff together. So let's get it roughed up. Time to foam tack our trusty little buddy here in place. I'm going to slide this over. Get a nice fit. Gonna do our other side. Slide this one in. Nice fit. That goes together really nice, guys. So we can, if you want to, slide them apart. Let them get tacky for a second. Let's look at the next step. So next we got to put in some control horns. All right, let's put that back together. Sweet. All right, guys, let's install these control horns on here. And basically, I just want to see how the layout's going to be. Are they going to be further away or are they going to be inner? And you can't mix this up because the holes only go one direction. So we are going to go ahead and take these, line our holes up, maybe. Nope. All right, so that one goes there. Two little screws. There. And there. And then on the back side, all we got to do is take this and line this up. So let's get to doing rudder in both elevators. Once we installed the wing, you want to go ahead and put on all four of these screws. The wires get fed through into the fuselage, and you just want to make sure there's a channel on the inside of here, right up in the wing, that all those wires slide from the motor into there, down into the fuse. Let's get this thing bolted on. All right, guys, I am going to recant on something I did earlier. we put in this Y harness in the gear. There's no need to do that because up top in the fuselage is a tri hookup. So you already had one hooked to the front nose gear, so I just took off the Y harness and then that hooks in just like it should, so we don't need the extras. Now, the ESC that is in here, let me pop you guys down. The ESCs will lay in here just like this, and I'm going to glue those two into place. I am going to change this connector so that way it is just AMOS anti-sparks and not the EC5, so that will get changed out. And we're going to run this itty bitty cute little jetty receiver on the inside. Oh, how adorable. So that's going to get done. You'll see that in the time lapse. We'll get set up. And there are no flaps on this. And I wanted to cover it earlier, it slipped my mind. So there are no flaps. Here, we're going to go ahead and install a cockpit sticker. We're going to glue in Mr. American Pilot in this plane, and we're going to make sure we use isopropyl alcohol to clean the edges around there just for any oilies off of our fingers. And we're going to do the same thing in the cockpit because smudges on the inside will show up later down the road, and we also want that thing to stick pretty good and not come out. So again, we use Zap clear canopy glue. That literally needs to dry overnight. I'm hoping to get all the electronics done tomorrow night. We can do stickers and then shoot it with a couple runs of Minwax and get this thing kind of set up for CG, get our throw set, and we're done. Now, on the back, let me show you here. So I have my tubing set up on here. Don't pinch these together yet because these things stink to get apart later without breaking them. So we just have those loose fit right now until we know all of our adjustments and push rods are right. And whenever you put your horns in, make sure your screws come through a little bit on the other side so they're not pulling out, and we can trim those off a little bit, and I will, so they're not sticking up like that. And we had one that was longer. The rudder was a little bit harder to get in. The longer one preferably should go right there, and I was able just to compress it and get it in, so at the end of the day it didn't matter the length's getting cut off 10.5 dozen ways or the other. Let's see, what else do we have here? This strap, I'm assuming, is for receiver mount. We won't need that. Maybe just let that thing linger in there. Our battery will go up front. But we're moving right along. Got lots of extra hardware, by the way, too. So it always scares me when I have extra pieces. It's like putting a car back together. It's like, where did I forget to put those? This has really been an hour and a half into a build. And being more experienced and done, I've done quite a few of these now. My suggestion would be, you know, leave yourself ample time. It's not getting done in an hour, but this has to be one of the cleanest, easiest Bitgo builds I've done yet. So with that being said, let's start time-lapsing. Well, we're about wrapped up here, guys, with the build on this rather quickly. Not super ecstatic with the way the inside turned out. Let me pop you off here and go for a walk. I just made an adapter from an EC5 over to the AMOS connectors. I use those things all the time, so that'll work out just fine here in this application. The one thing nobody will ever bitch about with Dynam is you will always have an abundance of wire. And normally I would shorten, remake, clean up, but for the sake of maybe jumping ahead here a little bit, we just bundled up the extra wire in the side. I'm not a big fan of that, but for now we're going to let it fly. We have our receiver mounted down on the inside of there. We put the epoxy over the rods here so we never have to worry about that color coming loose either way. Checked all of our screws for our steering servo, elevator, and rudder, and now we're going to set throws. Now they only give you suggested rates in here. They actually don't give you highs and lows, so I'm going to use their suggested rate as the lows, and then I'll take as much as I can get for the highs. I don't think we can go wrong there. So let's go ahead and set that up on elevator, rudder, and aileron. Everything's pretty set up, guys. Went pretty easily. Now it's time to get decals installed. So all we're going to simply do is peel up the edges with this, so I try not to finger them up too much and try and apply them. They actually do give you a nice set of instructions here as far as the layout where those things should go. So before we min-wax this bad boy and get everything clean, I want to go ahead and get the decals on there. So let's do it. Well, guys, there you have it. Stick a fork in her, she's done. Probably one of my favorite Dynam Bitgo Hobby builds yet. Pretty straightforward. 3 hours in is what I would give it time-wise. But check it out. Thing is pretty neat with the decals on it. Dresses it up a little bit. I actually like the bright yellow numbers there. Again, you can see how the canopy dried in there. Really cool. We're going to yet trim those off, but everything is set up, dialed in, and we are ready to go. Next time we catch up, we're going to be doing some min-wax covering to give this thing a little bit of protection and shine. Let's go.